George, the steamroller. George, the steamroller. Based on the railway series by the Red Diary Audrey. Illustrations by Robin Days. This is a story about George, the steamroller. He was proud and thought he was better than the engines. He enjoyed saying rude things to them about railways. But one day, he made his match. Once several workmen brought George the steamroller to work on the road next to the fin control station. The road was being widened, so the workmen took down the wall between the rails of the road. George didn't think much of railways or steam engines, so whenever he saw an engine travelling past, he made loud, rude comments about the railway. Sir Handel hadn't met George yet. His wheels had been slipping between the rails, so the fin controller set him away to be fitted with new wheels with broad tyres. When Sir Handel came back, the other engines teased him, saying he was a steamroller. He had steamroller wheels. With my new wheels, I'll be able to go faster than any of you, Sir Handel said boastfully. The engines couldn't wait. What would happen when organic Sir Handel met rude George the steamroller? That night, the engines told Sir Handel about the things George had said. He called us worn-out wheels on worn-out rails, Rennie said sadly. And he said the rail was no good, so he could pull them all up and make them into roads, Peter Sam added in horror. But with your new wheels, you're just the engine to tackle George, Scully said. Sir Handel was very important. Don't worry, he replied. I think I'll show him his best. The next morning, Sir Handel met George at the level crossing. So you're Sir Handel, George said sarcastically. I've heard you swank around with your new steamroller wheels, trying to be as good as me. Sir Handel smiled. Actually, he said, I'm better than you, and he puffed all smugly away. George was furious. He didn't like engine to get the better of him. I won't be ordered around by an imitation steamroller, George retorted proudly. Imitation steamroller, Sir Handel shouted crossly. I'm no imitation of anyone. You obviously wish you weren't an engine, otherwise you would be travelling so close to the rails. The two of them travelled side by side, exchanging insults as they went. No one could explain what happened next. George's driver said he'd signal for Sir Handel to stop, and Sir Handel's driver said he'd signal for George to stop. But suddenly it all went wrong. There was a loud crash as George's front roller hit Sir Handel's brake fan, which tilted sideways on the track. Sir Handel's lineman went to the station to get help. George and Sir Handel stood in shock silence while the drivers argued about whose fault it was. A policeman arrived just in time to stop the drivers' argument, handing in fisticuffs. Soon after, the fin controller arrived aboard Rusty and the fireman to settle the matter. I expected more from the both of you, the fin controller said to Handel and George. Your silly quarrelling has caused chaos and delay. Sir Handel and George were sorry. They now realised that their feuding could cause trouble. Luckily, they hadn't been going fast enough to cause any damage. Once George had backed away, Rusty was coupled to Sir Handel. They moved carefully forward, so the brake van tilted back onto the track. Then they hurried on to the station to deliver the special load. Come on, George, we should get going. So, said his driver, we're starting a new job on the other side of the island. George smiled. Oh, it's a shame we're leaving, he said. Haven't seen the engines working at a crisis. together in a crisis, I decided that they're not so bad after all. And the engine said that night. Sir Handel told the engines about the crash. Being a boastful engine, he exaggerated the story, telling that it was nearly a terrible disaster, that it was only his quick thinking had saved them. Wow, Sir Nathan. Admiration. Sounds like you really showed George's best. Rusty knew the real story, but he kept quiet to let Sir Handel have his moment of glory. The next day the road was finished, and the workmen put up a fence between the road and the tracks. Then Sir Handel heard that George had gone. He was more conceited than ever, and told all the engines that he had made him go away. Rusty decided it was about time that Sir Handel was brought down a peg or two. So he told the other engines what had really happened that day. Suddenly Sir Handel was being laughed at wherever he went. The engine said he needed his steamroller wheels to balance his big head. Sir Handel had learned a valuable lesson. He would never again make up silly stories to make him sound more important. And a few months later, when he met George again, they had a good chat about roads and railways and decided that they could be friends after all. George the Steamroller. George the Steamroller was proud and thought he was better than the engines. He enjoyed saying rude things to them about railways, but one day he met his match.